was happening. Our police was being targeted. And I knew they didn't like what was going on either. So I wanted to take to the internet and say, listen, these guys are human, just back off. Like, they feel it just as much as everybody else does.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Some stories are just too important to fit into a small time frame. More exploration is needed in order to get the full message out. So the suffering of Irish Angel needs a continuation. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Failace, and on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we welcome back our very own Amanda Coleman to discuss part 2 of the suffering of Irish Angel. Amanda, thank you so much for coming in. There was just way too much to cover on the first one.
There's a lot.
The first one got a little deep. So just to give a quick actually, before we get into the recap, let's give a big shout out to Toyota of Hackensack. We buy our cars there because we trust them. Go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. Also, when you're out and about in your new Toyota, visit the Grand Saloon, 940 Van Houten Avenue in Clifton. Go see Nick. Tell him Suffering Podcast sent you, and he's going to take care of you with some really good food, but we're still trying to get Spam on the menu for him. And, of course, I want a whole menu of Spam. And, of course, go see Frontline Cigars. Go to frontlinecigars.com. Put in the code TSP for a 15% discount site-wide.
Kevin's just got an issue with meat in a can. So that's why I like Spam.
If you don't like Spam, you're a communist. I'm sorry.
I keep saying I'm going to go get it. I had it as a kid. I haven't had it in years.
You have white pudding then.
The what?
In Ireland, we have like the way you have blood sausage?
Yeah.
Well, we have it's called white pudding. It's the opposite of the blood sausage. We call that black pudding, right? So
what is in it? Like zit juice or something? That is
it
gross.
looks like it, but it's gorgeous. Oh my God. It's gorgeous.
You eat haggis over there too.
No,
or is that Scottish?
that's
Scottish. Okay. Yeah,
Don't-
that's
don't-
disgusting.
Nasty.
That's nasty stuff. They'll eat
You
anything.
degrade her like that.
Let's recap a little bit, because when you were in here the last time, you really went through some real horror as you were growing up, from your father being abusive to being very poor to I have a hard time saying it. Sexual abuse.
Why doesn't everybody just watch the first episode?
Yeah, because it gets.
And you can recap it yourself.
I have a tough time even thinking about it, because you seem like a very, very kind, gentle person, and why anybody would do that and put that suffering on somebody unnecessarily like that. But if
Weak-minded people, maybe?
yeah, it's a power trip, I guess. Yeah. But we're not done yet. I mean, the last time we left you were living in the ghetto, in with people you didn't know, in 2-bedroom apartment, 5 people,
Dirty toilet.
Newspaper for toilet paper. It was
Oh,
Well, you know what?
you could read the news off your ass.
If there's nothing else,
better than fingers.
it's like this and newspaper. I think I'll take newspaper. And how long did you stay in that place?
Probably, I think in and around 6 months.
6 months. Yeah.
6 months. Yeah.
And then where did you go from there?
Things started to get a little bit better when my mum came home. We rented a place called Drumcondra. It's in the inner city, but it's the nice part of the inner city. And we rented there for a while, and I went hairdressing. I was working. My mum was looking after my sister. Life started to turn around. My brother.
Now, was Howard still in the picture at this point?
No. She found out he was married.
Can't trust those American guys.
Anyway, so yeah.
That's a whole nother episode now.
Yeah.
Pilot. Yeah. Well, in hindsight, hindsight's
How he
always
got
20/20.
away with it, I don't know. Like, you took her over there for like 6 months. Like, they were together,
Because he had a stabbing cabin. That's why. That's what he had.
What they say, sailors always used to say they had a hole in every port.
That's it.
They're the modern day sailors. Pilots are. So your mother
Couldn't see
comes
my
back.
cockpit.
Oh my God.
Amanda's got real trauma. You want to make another Boy Scout joke?
If you're just bullshitting to get some money, they'll be able to see that. Probably.
You were in that lawsuit, weren't
I was.
you? He's one of those latch-on guys. He hears money out there. Let me go get him.
Even the Boy Scout lawsuit isn't off bounds for him?
Nah. Your mom comes back, starts reestablishing the family unit
Yeah.
a little bit better. Things
Yeah.
get progressively better.
Yeah, I was working. I was training to be a hairdresser. Sister was going to school. My brother had turned himself into the police when he came home. They gave him a slap on the wrist. He went to live with me gran, got his life on track, got a job, all that kind of good stuff. For once, things were starting to, turn.
Starting to look up a little bit.
Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
rain all the time.
No. And then the 7th of February 1993 came. The knock on the door to say that David was killed in a car accident. And that was...
At this point, you got to be thinking to yourself,
What next?
when the hell is this stuff going to end?
Yeah. It was god awful. Like, it really was. I was actually in a nightclub when I found out. My cousin came in to tell me. And when I went home, I remember walking in the door and seeing my mum with her head vomiting into a bucket. Like, she was just gone. And I knew from that moment on that life was never going to be the same again. She had completely, her life was, she was distraught. Like,
She just shut down.
she shut down. Yeah. It was horrible. And then it was bizarre as well, because for me, I had not seen my father since I was a kid. Like, we had nothing to do with him. He never paid maintenance. He never wanted to see us. It was like...
Well, there's a reason why I asked where the father was in the picture, because in my opinion, anybody that puts their hands on a woman doesn't deserve to be talked about, because
Yeah.
he's not a man.
It was a weird one for me, because when David died, I'll never forget, we went in to see David laid out. You go to do the wake, right? And the place was packed. And I remember standing beside him, and somebody walked in and goes, "This is your gran and your grandfather from my father's side." And my father walked in the door. And I just said, "Get the fuck away from me now." I said, "Why are you coming in here now?" I said, "You're a little too late." That really, that I was mad. Like, I was
He was
furious.
alive for 19 years, and you didn't
And-
pay attention, right?
Yeah, and now all of a sudden here they are,
To play the grieving father role.
Yeah, right. So I was pissed. But from that moment on, my mom kind of spiraled out of control. So she had to be sedated all the time to go to sleep. She was drinking constantly. We lost the place that we were renting in the city. We were living on a mattress on the floor in our aunt's house. I just have to listen to her cry herself to sleep every night. Like, it was horrible. And eventually I got her to move. We moved back into the inner city. And there we were... It was a tough one, because, she was grieving for her son. There was myself, my sister, and she would lash out at us. She'd pull us out of bed just to fight with us, just to blame us, like that David was dead, we were alive. And I know she didn't mean it,
Yeah.
but it was...
She wasn't coming from a right place.
Yeah. So, I never would judge her on it, because who am I to say if that happened to one of my kids, how I would feel about her,
I would have to say that this is the birth of your new life.
Yeah.
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 This compassion that you have inside of you.
Yeah. It was tough, but that whole thing, like, she met a guy, he was a wrong, and this guy was part of, I won't say an organization that he shouldn't have been a part of, but anyway.
He was a pilot too.
I would have preferred he was a pilot. But
A certain criminal organization.
yeah.
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 Enough said.
Yeah. And he would take her to the early house to drink. I'd be looking after my sister. And then the if he wasn't staying over, the place would get broken up. Like, the fights, she'd start again, and it was just horrible. So I eventually met my eldest daughter's father, a guy who just showed me attention. I was living in this crazy little flat that there was just so much negativity and so much, you're just trying to cope and get by, and he showed me affection.
You say you had to have like a fragile ego at that point too.
Yeah. I was 18 and I slept with him, and I got pregnant with my eldest daughter. He did a bunk. He ran off.
That's usually how you get pregnant.
Yeah, just a bit.
Unless you're married.
No, see, a bunk in Ireland means he's done a jump. He's gone. He's ran.
He's done a jump. And
He's
I
done-
love that term, by the way. He's done a jump and he's gone.
They call it nut, bolt, and screw here.
So,
Isn't it screw, nut, bolt?
Yeah, that could be it. Yeah, I got all the things in the toolbox. I just didn't know which one to pull out first.
What kind of childhood did you have? Nut, bolt, then screw.
Screw, nut, and bolt. That's it. Screw, nut, and bolt.
nut,
Yeah, I
and
got it.
bolt.
Yeah,
oh my
very
God.
good. I'm sorry.
So you meet this guy who's finally
Yeah.
showing you some value.
Yeah. I suppose you cling to that with the hope that, you've come from a life where and this was my mentality, probably from everything that I experienced, is that you go through so much horror stories with men all my life, but yet all you ever wanted was that family, to be happy in a family, because your whole life, your family life was chaotic.
You want stability.
Yeah, exactly. So I met him, got pregnant with Dion. He ran off. Eventually, he came back 3 months later. We had Dion. We moved out together. Then we were getting married for my 21st birthday. And 3 months before the wedding, he went off with someone else. So that was, I was like, seriously? He couldn't make it up, So that was a nightmare. So I guess
Now you're left with a child.
I'm left with a child.
You're a young lady.
Yeah, we were all I was a hairdresser. My sister was a hairdresser. All my friends were hairdressers. And in
It's the 90s, so your hair was probably...
Yeah, it was huge.
It was huge.
The Aquanet days.
Yeah.
But yeah, all my friends went to Australia. They were crying out for tradespeople, so they all went. I couldn't go because I had my daughter. And my sister went. So I had nobody really. And then I met my ex-husband. And he wasn't the type of guy that I would normally go for.
Meaning he was ugly.
No, he actually was.
Come on, he's
he
ugly.
wasn't. He was.
It's not the type of guy. When a woman says you're not
No,
my typical type,
Well, you see,
I'm used to going for like good-looking
no, well,
guys.
I guess I always liked a little bit of a bad boy in a way. He wasn't. He seemed like the really good-natured, had 2 kids from prior marriage, was a really good father. And because he was a really good father, it was that I was attracted to, So we got together, got pregnant with Lena, had Lena, got married. But just before we got married, he got testicular cancer. And
That's a kick in the nuts.
literally, we didn't start on a very good key, key. But we got through it. Everything was fine. My mom, the day of my wedding, was really weird with me, like really weird with me. She never told me I looked beautiful. She never, she was really strange. And I couldn't fathom it. And my sister was the same. She was like, what's going on, And I was like, I have no clue. And it hurt me, like it really hurt me.
It's your special
It's
day.
your special day. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then moving on some, and my ex, he was, all of a sudden a second phone appears, and the late coming home from work.
No, here we go.
Yeah, so I was like, right. I knew it was coming, but I guess I was in denial because I didn't want to I had finally had stability and didn't want to rock the apple cart on the kids. They were happy, and their happiness meant everything to me as opposed to my happiness.
It's amazing the things you'll put up with for your children's happiness.
Yeah.
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 But it seems you've always put everybody before yourself anyway.
Always. It's just it's like an automatic default with
Yeah.
me, But yeah, so he left his phone at home. I seen a picture of the girl on the phone. He runs through the door, realizing he left the phone at home. And I asked him about her, and he said, I'm really sorry. He said, she had cancer, I had cancer. We just kind of flocked we resonate, we got together, and it just happened. But he was like, I really want to give it a go. So we said, okay, give it a go. Moving on to this early December was his Christmas party. We went to his event and she was there, and sure, he was over talking with her all night. So I got in a cab and I went home. He didn't come home until 3 o'clock the next day. So I was like, right, listen, this is just, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. And, I said, it's not fair on me. It's not fair on the kids. It's time to, move on. So he's like, well, I can't afford to move out right now. And I was like, that's okay. It was weird because as much as I knew he was having an affair on me, I could kind of understand how they got together. You know what I mean? They had an understanding that I could never understand, so.
Yeah, that connection.
Yeah.
That's why Mike and I sleep together.
I know, right? I was wondering.
Because we got a connection.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did I just out you? I'm the top, just so you know. I think I just made him blush.
Oh, you did. You actually
I
did.
think I made him blush.
It was a weird one. So I went over to my only friend that I had at the time, Sandra, and I told her what was after happening, told my mum what was after happening. My mum was over, my aunt's drinking at this stage, and she had asked my other half to collect her. So he did. And he called me and he's like, can you come home? He said, your mom's here and she won't leave and the kids are upset and she's been hitting me in the car in front of the kids and everything else. And I was like, Jesus Christ, here we go again. So I flew home and I just walked in and I said, you just need to go. I said, there's enough upset here. We just, this has got to stop. And she said to me, you think you're all that having a husband? She said, little do you know that me and your husband spent the night together when you were on your bachelorette party.
Oh my God. Oh my God. You sure you didn't grow up in Alabama?
West Virginia.
Oh my God. It was
That had to be one of the biggest gut punches out of everything you went through.
It was soul destroying. Like it was. Like normally all the bad shit that's happened to me, I never let it affect me as much as that did.
You've had...
I mean, how many times did you stick up for your mother and put up with all of that?
I guess
And now this is
in my mind's eye, I knew how bad she was hurting from her life. And that's not my story to tell, that's hers. But so I always just made excuses for it, just in a way understood why she would act a certain way or, whatever.
Every turn in your life seems to kick you right in the teeth.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, what do they say? Every time something goes good, they pull the rug out from under her feet.
Yeah.
And now you're starting all over from the ground up.
Yeah, pretty much.
And now you're starting all over again.
Yes.
Again.
All over again.
But in a positive way.
This is something I don't understand about you. I'm just perplexed that you chose to dedicate your life to helping others when you yourself seem like you needed help the most. I don't understand that. How did you transform into that type of person? I know you were always taking care of people. That's different. Now you're taking care of strangers.
Yeah.
How do you transform into that?
I actually fell into it just by pure accident.
And of course, we're talking about Irish Angel.
Yeah. It was the run up to the elections between Trump and Clinton. And normally when there's an election on, as I have learned in this country, Black Lives Matter will kick off or, there'll be riots, there'll be some rhetoric that's being pushed, right? So my cousin, who's a police officer, was saying to me, there was stuff going on at home and I was annoyed about because policing in Ireland is very different. As much as it's the same mission, it's the same, it's very different. And we're about 20 years behind you guys when it comes to policing, but we're cloak and dagger. We don't talk to the public about what goes on within the services. Everything is hush hush, and anything that is released would go through the Garda press office, meaning they had control over everything. Yeah. So when I seen what was happening, our police was being targeted. And I knew they didn't like what was going on either. So I wanted to take to the internet and say, listen, these guys are human, just back off. Like, you know, they feel it just as much as everybody else does. And Damien had said to me, Amanda, he said, we don't have it half as bad, he said, as what's going on in the United States. And I was like, what's going on? And he said, you wouldn't believe it if I told you. And I was like, go on, tell me. And he says, like, cops are sitting in their cars and they're actually being shot.
That happened,
Assassinated.
That happened in Jersey City, Melvin Santiago.
Yeah.
Happened in New York too.
Who
Yeah.
I have a brief connection to Melvin Santiago. He was sitting in a car. Somebody walked up behind him, put one behind his ear.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it. So I was blown away by it. I couldn't fathom that someone would be that evil. You know what I mean? I knew that obviously.
No, wait, hold on. You couldn't fathom. You
After all you've been through,
You couldn't fathom that somebody would be that evil.
your husband
Holy
slept with your mother at your bachelorette
shit.
party, and
Your family member sexually abused you. Your father kicked the shit out of your mother, and you can't fathom.
Well,
Wow.
but that to me is different. It's like,
It's way worse.
I know.
It's way worse.
Kev, she's Irish. You got to talk slow to her.
But I got to live, though. I got to live. They don't.